Adolf Hitler was born in 1889, in a small village called Braunau am Inn, lying right on the border between Austria and Germany. A boy born into a world undergoing immense transformation. Late 19th century Europe glimmered with the light of science, of industrial achievements. Yet it was also saturated with deep-rooted prejudices, ethnic tensions, and the simmering fractures of great empires. And in that world, a seemingly ordinary, timid, sometimes stubborn child would grow up to become one of the most controversial and darkest figures in human history. Let us trace the life of that man, not to glorify him, but to understand how an ordinary individual could change the world in a way that humanity would have to pay for with tens of millions of lives. Hitler grew up in an unhappy family. His father, Alois Hitler, a stern, irritable customs official, was domineering and harsh. His mother, Clara, gentle, frail, and blindly devoted to her children, was the opposite. In Adolf's memories, the best days were always tied to his mother, the woman he viewed as his final refuge. His father, on the other hand, was like a storm constantly looming over the small house, ready to strike whenever he felt disappointed or weary. From a young age, Hitler showed a conflicted personality, sullen yet ambitious, sensitive yet easily wounded. He loved painting, immersing himself in landscapes, buildings, lines and shapes, confident that he would one day become a great artist. He hated the suffocating discipline of his father, and he despised the mold that school and family tried to force onto him. He wanted freedom, he wanted to paint, he wanted to escape the small, ordinary town where everything felt trivial. But life is rarely as gentle as the strokes of a paintbrush. When Hitler was 13, his father died suddenly. Instead of opening a door to freedom, the loss thrust the family into poverty and left his mother, the person Hitler loved unconditionally, crushed by anxiety. 2 years later, illness took Clara's life. Her death shattered Adolf Hitler completely. From then on, the 16-year-old wandered through life with an empty heart, carrying a sorrow he would never truly shake off. He went to Vienna, where he believed he would become an artist. But that dream collapsed with a single rejection letter from the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. Adolf Hitler failed in the very first round. Once, then twice. During those years in Vienna, Hitler lived like a failure, poor, aimless, sleeping in cheap hostels, surviving by selling small paintings. It was in this city, in the depths of poverty, that he absorbed the extremist ideologies spreading at the time: radical nationalism, hatred toward minority groups, and anger toward those he believed had stolen his future. From a teenager who loved painting, Hitler slowly sank into the shadows of extremism, shadows he would never escape. In 1914, World War I broke out. Hitler joined the German army. The years in the trenches changed him forever. No longer a destitute young artist, Hitler became a devoted, and almost fanatical, soldier, viewing war as a path to prove his worth. He carried messages, fought, was wounded twice, and even recovered after a gas attack. And it was in a hospital, temporarily blinded by toxic gas, that Hitler heard the news: Germany had surrendered. He later described that moment as a dagger thrust into the heart. His world crumbled, his beliefs, his honor, his purpose, all plunged into darkness. He convinced himself that Germany had not been defeated on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by internal enemies. That rage would later become one of the most dangerous forces in history. After the war, Germany fell into chaos, economic collapse, hyperinflation, political division, and widespread despair. And in that turbulent time, Hitler, then just an unemployed veteran, found something he had never had before: a platform. He joined the German Workers' Party, a small extremist group, and quickly became its driving force. Not because of education, and not because of experience, but because of his voice. Hitler, the failed artist, finally found his stage: cramped meeting halls, angry crowds, people desperate for someone to speak their pain aloud. With a fiery, hypnotic, thunderous speaking style, Hitler transformed society's anger into political momentum. People listened to him, believed him, and began to see him as the only person who could save Germany from collapse. From 1920 to 1933, Hitler rose from an unknown, impoverished ex-soldier to the Chancellor of Germany. His path was not just political skill, but a deadly combination of propaganda, radical nationalism, hatred, economic crisis, and the world's failure to stop him. By 1934, After President Hindenburg's death, Hitler consolidated full power. He became the Führer, the leader, holding absolute authority. And from there, the world witnessed the beginning of a blood-soaked chapter in history. Hitler rebuilt Germany at unprecedented speed, expanding the military, investing in infrastructure, boosting the arms industry, creating jobs, and pulling the nation out of economic ruin. But behind that prosperity was a brutal system of oppression, fascist ideology, racial doctrine, and the most horrific genocide of the 20th century. He launched World War II in 1939 when German forces invaded Poland. Within a few years, Europe was engulfed in flames. German armored divisions swept through Paris, the Netherlands, and Northern Europe. Bombs fell on London. The entire world was drawn into a war machine ignited by Hitler. Behind the front lines, Hitler and his regime carried out the Holocaust, murdering 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. The so-called civilized century became witness to one of the greatest crimes in human history. In his final years, Hitler lived in a collapsing Berlin, inside a damp underground bunker. The more he lost, the more extreme, paranoid, and detached from reality he became. Every anxious glance from his generals, every disastrous report, every bomb shaking the ground above, each was like the ticking of a clock counting down to the end of a dark era. On April 30, 1945, with Soviet forces only a few hundred meters away, Hitler committed suicide in the bunker. A life ended as quickly as a bullet, but the consequences it left behind would endure for generations. Today, when we look back on Adolf Hitler's life, we see not only a dictator, but a warning. When a society is desperate, when people feel lost, when hatred is nurtured, when extremism goes unchecked, one individual can drag all of humanity into the abyss.